The Leica SL3-S is out for a few weeks now. Today we're gonna have a close look at the menu settings. The SL3 and the SL3-S share the same body. They don't share the same sensor, that's a big difference. The SL3 has a 60 megapixel sensor and the SL3-S has a 24 megapixel sensor. But this is not the only difference. The SL3-S is more focused on video. So today I want to go through the menu settings. I did all that already for the SL3. There are two videos out for the SL3 settings. One focuses on the photo settings and the other one focuses especially on the video settings. I also offer on my website a download of my LCS files. So if you want to have your SL3 set like my SL3, head over to my website and you can download those settings for free. I also have a PDF available where you can see how I assigned my buttons and dials. The same now exists for the SL3-S. I don't own an SL3-S. I got it as a loaner from Alexander Görlitz from Görlitz. I will talk about him a little bit later. But thanks to Alex, I had time to set up the menu in a way that I would set it up if the camera was mine. And I want to go and share all the settings with you now. There are two ways for you to watch or work through this video. You can just watch it and then go on my website later and download the settings then. Or you can stop the video for the moment, download the settings right now, install it on your camera, and then come back to the video and go through the video with your camera in your hand. And then maybe you can make little adjustments that fits you, and then you have a perfectly set up SL3-S. There's one other thing I'm gonna start because the SL3-S for me is more a video focused camera. So I start with the video menus, and then in the second part of the video I will go over the photo settings. I put in chapter marks, so if you are interested in one specific thing, you probably should be able to find it pretty easy and then just go through the chapter marks and jump wherever you want. If you already know my SL3 menu videos, or if you maybe saw my Q3 video about the menu or the Deluxe 8 video about the menu, you know by now that I set up my cameras with user profiles. I have several scenarios which are starting points for me, and those I have set up as user profiles. We can see them here. I have a handheld profile, a tripod profile, a Studio 56 Kelvin setup, a handheld 4000 ISO, a tripod 4000 ISO, and a Leica M setting that basically mirrors the buttons and the dials like an Leica M camera. Why do I start with that? Because my SL3 is, as I said, set up as a main photo camera. I don't use it for videos that much. So if I switch my profiles, I land in the photo mode, which you can recognize on the red frames on the buttons. The SL3-S I have set up as a video camera. This is because if I would own an SL3-S, I would use it mainly as a video camera because, as I said, my photo camera is my SL3 and I really appreciate the 60 megapixels on that camera. But now we're talking about the SL3-S menu. So if I switch to a other user profile, I land in the video settings. So how do you do that? It's pretty simple. If you ever save your own settings, it will save exactly the setting the camera has right now. And now I can see on the yellow underline that we are in video mode. So if I would save this profile now into handheld, handheld would always be in video mode if I choose that. Same thing is if we change to photo mode, now we see the red underline. And if you would save it now, for example, the tripod profile, every time I choose tripod, I will be first in photo mode. So my SL3 is set up all in photo mode. Of course, there are also settings for video mode. If I would now save this profile in photo mode, every setting that is set in video mode is also saved. So basically, I have 6 slots to save profiles, but in all those 6 slots, it saves every setting of every photo and every video settings you have. My settings are called the same on both cameras because basically they are the same. If I choose here my handheld setting, it is set for photo on the SL3, but if I switch to video mode, I have the best settings for handheld video shoots. Same for tripod and so on. So that said, let's start with the menu for the SL3 and start with my main setting, the handheld setting, and basically we go through that setting. This is always my starting point. The tripod profile is basically the same setting with one difference. I'm gonna touch on that, and then we're gonna also talk about the other profiles. But now, let's start. There are 3 dials on the camera. You have one left dial, one right dial, and one thumb dial. The left dial up here changes the ISO settings or the ASA settings. I'm going to talk about the difference later. The right dial, we have the aperture, and the thumb dial, we have also the aperture. I have not assigned any dial to the shutter speed or like the shutter opening, which is set to 180 degrees. This is because I don't want it to accidentally change. I want to really be in control of that setting, especially in video mode. We have the function button here. We can toggle the informations we have here on the screen. We'll come to that later. You have 4 different settings you can make. Then we have this button here where you can change the monitor mode, which I have set on auto. Can turn everything off. I can have the viewfinder only. I can have the monitor only, or I can have auto settings. I have it on auto. The moment I look through the viewfinder, the screen turns off. Then we have this button up here. If I press this, I can change the focus mode. And the right button up here, I can change the white balance. We have also kind of a hidden button because the thumb dial is also a button. This I have assigned with the change of manual focus to autofocus. Now we're on autofocus. Now we're on manual focus. We have another 2 buttons in the front of the camera. Those 2. The lower button here is changing from photo mode to video mode, from video mode to photo mode. The upper button here in video mode turns the auto magnification on or off. I need that a lot because sometimes I'm happy if I can zoom in digitally to take manual focus, but then again, sometimes it really annoys me, so it's just one touch of a button and it's on and off. If we press the menu once, we are in the control center. We can change the buttons on the lower rows. You just have to press and hold the icon you want to change. And then you get several possibilities with what you can assign that specific icon. Upper left, I have the drive mode. It's disabled here because I have set the camera on Cine mode. I'm going to talk about that later. The second button is the focus mode. When I choose my profile, I am in continuous autofocus when I'm on video. The next one is the autofocus mode. I have set it on eye face body detection. Then we have exposure metering. I go with multi-field, not highlight weighted, because sometimes in highlight weighted, if the sun is there, it of course aims for the sun and preserves every information on the brightest spot, and I'm not always want that, so I go with multi-field. Then in handheld mode here we have image stabilization on. Then I have my video profiles. Here I have my video profile number 1. I will talk about the video profiles on a later point. Then I have my user settings. I can go through them here, so I can change them very fast. Last but not least, I have the button to format my cards. I know some people are thinking this is not a good idea to have that in the control center because you might accidentally format your card. Never happened to me. I don't think that is an issue. So I have no problem with that, but do it on your own risk. Main menu, first page. Focus mode. I have set it on autofocus continuous. Of course, on video you can also use the intelligent autofocus. In video mode, single focus doesn't make any sense. Manual focus, of course, when you want to do your focus manually, or if, of course, you have a manual lens on that, then it's going to be manual anyway. Follow focus, I won't go into that. I think it's a neat feature, but I actually don't. If you do pack shots or something like that, you can use that. Otherwise, I don't think that function makes a lot of sense. The autofocus mode, already talked about that. I do eye face body detection. Of course, when you film your dog or your cat, then you can go to animal detection. I have never tested that on any of my cameras. The focus settings, I don't mess around with that because now again, my settings are starting points. It's always a starting point because every day is different. Audio magnification I have on in the beginning, but I have my function button in the front where I just can turn it off by the press of a button. The touch autofocus I have on in video mode because sometimes it's cool to just press the point where you want to have your focus. Then focus limit macro, this is turned off because it's probably not the right lens. If you go back to the first page, we have exposure metering. I already talked about that, multi-field, and the ASA settings are 1/6 increments. It's the standard setting that Leica said and didn't change that. The EV increments, I go with 1/3. I don't use that at all. I make proper settings otherwise, so I don't need EV correction. Then we come to the video profiles. You have 5 profiles you can set up. So my 5 profiles are, I have basically my YouTube profile, which is a 6K open gate with 29.97 frames per second. I record in H.265, in LGOP, in 420, 200 megabits, in L-Log on 35 millimeters, and I can record on every possible storage I have. I'm just gonna go quickly through the others. The next one is basically the same in 4K. Then I have a RAW profile in 6K. OpenGate, I have a RAW profile in Cinema 4K. And I have a Cinema 6K 29.7 ProRes profile as well. ProRes I can record eternally, but I would need a very fast card, which at least 1939 megabits. Otherwise, you can also decide to directly record to an SSD, or you can go through HDMI and you can attach an external monitor. I actually did already a video about the SL3-S and how I rig it for video. And there I show how I use an Atomo Ninja 5 or a Blackmagic Video Assist to record through HDMI in RAW video. The white balance I have on auto. Of course, it's always a starting point. Usually when I do video, especially in controlled environments, I don't do auto white balance. I set the white balance for every shot. Or if I know I have like a same light conditions and all my lights are, for example, on 5600 Kelvin, I will set the white balance exactly on that number. The IDR is turned off because I'm in log. The HLG settings and the log setting I did not touch. The Leica looks are turned off. I'm not going to go into what the Leica looks are. I have several videos talking about the Leica looks. They are just grayed out because I'm shooting in log. Same with the video styles. I turned on Cine mode. The difference if you turn off Cine mode is that when we go back into the beginning, we now have here the ISO value and we have the shutter speed as we know it from photography. This is in video not very good because now it would be math because we're shooting now in 30 frames a second. So the shutter speed should be 1/6 of a second. I highly recommend to really use Cine mode. And so we turn on Cine mode and then we're good. HDMI audio I have turned off because I don't want a feedback. If I ever have a live shot in a studio and there is a monitor with a speaker in it and that's turned on, then you have feedback. To avoid that, turn it off. I don't have touched audio at all because I always use external microphones. So this is also not relevant for me. The timecode. The timecode I have set on free run, so it's always changing. And the start time is the camera time. Basically, what you can see is, if you go back here, you can now see here the time of the day. We have 10 minutes to 4 in the afternoon. It's a European setting. If I now take several clips, they will have unique time codes, which I think is better than every clip start at 000. That's why I do it this way. Next, segmented video I have turned off. What does that do? If you turn it on and you have longer takes, it will cut every now and then. I don't know exactly after what time. But for example, you are recording a theater play, it goes on for 3 hours, you have turned that off, you will have one huge file that is 3 hours long. And if you turn that on, you have several smaller, shorter files. A big advantage of that would be that if one of the files would be corrupt, you still have the other file. So you don't lose the whole play, you only lose that segment of the play. Next, color bars. You have several standards in color bars. I don't use that. The rec frame I have on, so whenever I start recording, you will have a red frame. Image stabilization, of course, is turned on because it's my handheld profile. If I put the camera on a tripod, you should turn that off because sometimes it does weird things. Or if you start panning, it thinks it's moving and then it does really weird things. So if you're ever on a tripod, turn that off or just change into my tripod setting, which is basically the exactly same settings. The only difference is that image stabilization is turned off. Customize control. Here you find the settings for your function buttons. What does that mean? You cannot set your function buttons, but you can activate and deactivate all the options you want to see if you want to change a function button. If you want to change the assignment of a button, you just press it, and then all those options that you activated are coming and you can choose one of them. I just leave them all turned on because I want to have all the possibilities that are available to me at all times. We talked about the dials. I already have assigned them. You have two ways of assigning dials. You can assign manual focus lenses and autofocus lenses. I have set that up for video, that on the thumb wheel and the right dial I have the t-stop, basically the aperture. Then I have the ASA on the left dial, and my manual focus lenses I have set up in a way that the left dial is also ASA. The right dial is not the aperture because manual lenses have the aperture on the lens. So you can assign a button or a wheel for that. So it's EV increments, and on the thumb wheel you have the auto magnification again, so you can digitally zoom in and take focus. Then you can change the dial direction. I never touched that. And you can lock the dials, which I also don't have. Capture assistance. This is basically what I have set on the function button here. Those are 4 different profiles where you can basically turn on and off information. So once again, this is my setup, which I have initially. I have no profile which shows me less. And every time I press the function button here, I get more information. The first profile shows me the upper icons, shows me the level gauge, and also shows me frame lines. I shoot all my stuff in 2:1, so those are frame lines for a 2:1 aspect ratio. If I press the function button, it will jump to my profile number 2, which will add the sidebar with more information. If I press it once more, I will get the histogram on the upper left corner. And if I press it once more, I will get a 1/3 grid. If I press it once again, it goes to profile number 1, which is basically empty with only seeing the level gauge and the frame lines. The next point is store management. Here you can format the different storage options. I only have right now in the camera a SD card. If I would attach an SSD through the USB port here on the side, I could format, or I need to format that as well. Or I have a CF Express card that I can format on the upper point here. Then you can edit file name. It is standard, it is set on L. I leave it on L. I have on other cameras, I have set it, for example, on the Q. I have used a Q. And on my M10s, on my M cameras, I have used the M10 or M10M. There you can have several letters. Here you only can have one. So I immediately can see on the file with which camera I took that file. That sometimes helps me to organize my stuff. Then we have the Leica FOTOS. This is basically the connection to your Photos app on your cell phone. On all my cameras where it's possible, I have it on performance mode. What does that mean? I have on my cell phone. I have the Leica FOTOS app always running in the background. At the moment I turn on a camera and it's capable of performance mode, it immediately connects through Bluetooth. And then when I take a picture, for example, I have the geodata baked into the file. In video, that does not work, so it doesn't make that much sense in the video mode. But those settings here now, the Leica FOTOS settings, are exactly the same here as they are in the photos, so there's no difference. The USB settings, I allow USB charging, of course, that makes sense. The USB mode is basically the one that is interesting here, because the moment you attach a USB storage, for example, or if you attach your iPhone, a menu pops up and it asks you what you want to do, and then you can choose whatever you need in that situation. For me, it doesn't make sense to just set it on one function here. I always want to have the possibility, if I attach something, it asks me, I say this is mass storage, for example, and then it connects to my computer, for example, and it becomes a mass storage. When you attach an external SSD to record on, you need to activate it once. So you just put it in here and then you activate it and then it connects, which you can't do right now because I don't have any SSD attached. So I go and use the SD card and now I can shoot again and it's absolutely no problem. Last page, we are on the user profiles. I already explained how I use them. Here you can manage them. It's a little bit, I still think that could be optimized in a way. It's not that user-friendly. You go into manage, then you save profile, then you choose your profiles. I already named my profile. You can rename them as you like. Once you figure out your way, then it becomes easier. If you want to export your settings, and I highly recommend to export your settings always before you import settings, you just press export and then it says export profiles and then you say yes, and that's already happened, and it put all your settings into the SSD card. It's called settings.lcs, that's the name of the file. You cannot change that name, so it cannot be my settings, it has to be settings.lcs. So you need to make subfolders and store it in folders if you have several settings you want to store. And every time you import, you have the settings LCS file on your SSD or your storage that is in the camera, and then you say import, and you don't even get a message now, it's just imported again. Because I just saved one on the SSD, there was one, so it just imported that again. Then we come to camera settings, where actually I don't change a lot. So we have display settings, power saving, date and time, Wi-Fi, or you can completely reset your camera, what we're not gonna do. You see here the lens profile, you can reset the image numbering, you can do pixel mapping, you can automatically clean your sensor. It probably just shakes it off a little bit, so I still would recommend that you have other cleaning tools. I actually did a video on how I clean my cameras. I explain in detail how I clean my SL3 sensor and the camera and everything, so if you want to check that out, I put a link in the description. I have a distance unit, I have meters, because of course I'm European, and acoustic signals are very low. Those are all gadgets for me. Camera information, I have the latest firmware on that, I have the latest lens firmware, and you have license information, regulatory information, yeah. It's only interesting if you want to do a firmware update, which you can do here, or of course you can do it through the Leica FOTOS app as well with the newer Leica cameras. Then we have the Leica content credentials, which I'm going to touch when we're talking about the photo menu. It's still accessible here, but it doesn't make any sense to talk about it because it's not going to sign your video files, not at this point at least. And then in the end we have the language, and yeah, that's about it. That was the video menu. Before we now come to the photo menu, let me talk about Alex Görlitz, who lended me the camera. Alex owns a Leica boutique in Bünde, Germany. He is an absolutely fantastic guy. I met him personally for the first time about a year ago in Wetzlar, when he handed me my own personal SL3 camera, which I bought from him. I bought all my Leica gear in the last years with Alex. I'm very happy with his service. He has all the new stuff if it's available to him, and he has a great collection of used items as well. So if you looking for anything, check out Alex's store and call him. He's a really, really nice guy, and he is always trying to help Leica fans to get what they want and what they need, and he's really, really a nice guy. So let's look at the photo menu. And again, let's just choose the handheld profile, and then we'll see we're in video mode because it's yellow now. Of course, I want to talk about the photo, so I press into photo mode, and now it's all, you see the red underlining. We are in the photo mode now, and these are the handheld settings for the photo mode. The left dial is my exposure compensation. The right dial is the shutter speed, and the thumb dial is the aperture. Those are the dials. When we talk about the buttons, we have this button here. I don't have it set on the LCD. I have set it on toggle the focus point. What does that mean? If I here with the joystick move my focus point around, and then I want it back in the middle, I just press that button and it jumps back in the middle. If I press the button again, it jumps back on that position it was. Up here, on the first button, I have the drive mode. The second button on the right here, I have the ISO settings. When I press the wheel here, I can turn on and off clipping. And the joystick, when I press the joystick, maybe I can show it here. Here I have my autofocus now. The reason why I do that is I sometimes frame something and then I have to move the camera and I want my focus to be at that specific point I set it. And that's why I have separated the shutter button from the autofocus button. And so I have the autofocus on the joystick when I press it, and otherwise it's all on manual. So when I press the shutter button, there is no autofocus happening. If I turn here to, for example, autofocus single, of course, when I have pressed the shutter button, it also takes autofocus. But if you want to turn that off, I had a really hard time finding that function. There is no way to turn off the half press of the shutter button. The only way to turn it off is to switch into manual focus. Let's just browse shortly through the icons here. My preferred exposure mode is manual, so I have total control. I have my focus setting also on manual. Then I have the AF mode. It's on field, which is this little small box here, which basically is my focus point. Then I have the connection to my Leica FOTOS app. Here I have my exposure metering, which is on multi-field. I talked about multi-field in the video settings. Then we have the drive mode is single. Then I have my user settings and of course formatting the SD card. I talked about the problem, or not the problem, the issue of having that icon here. Also in the video mode, it's your decision if you want to have it here. There are people who are not recommending that because they think you can accidentally format your card. It's your own risk to have it there. I never had a problem. Focus mode, manual focus. The AF mode, I already talked about that, is field. Focus settings, I did not change anything. Exposure metering, already talked about that, also multi-field. The ISO settings are on auto as a starting point, and sometimes I choose to do them manually, but auto is pretty good. Before we move on with the second page of the photo menu, let me please remind you to subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Both helps my channel to grow. According to my stats, I have a lot of recurring viewers, but actually over 80% are not subscribers. So please become a subscriber because that helps me and the YouTube algorithm to push my videos even further so new people can find me. Thank you. So now let's go back to the second page of the menu. First, we have the EV increments, it's 1/3. Drive mode, I already talked about, it's single. Let me mention a few things here. If you go to interval shooting and activate that, a settings tab opens. If you go to settings, you can set your interval shooting. I have set it on 300. I have set it on an interval of 1 frame per second or 1 photo per second. Why do I do that? Because I use interval shooting as my self-timer. So basically, if I have to be in the picture as well, I put the camera on a tripod, I do 300 pictures, I just press the shutter button, and then it takes a photo every second. I run into the crowd, I'm a part of the group, I go back, and then I don't have only one photo, which you would have if you would use a self-timer. So interval shooting, in my opinion, is the best way to take pictures you have to be in yourself. Then exposure bracketing, when I activate that, I come to settings here. I have set it to 5 pictures. I do 2 EV stops, so I really have like a bandwidth of different exposures. If I now go back to single, those settings are remembered by the camera. So if I will never use them in the next weeks or month, and then somewhere around Christmas, I will have to make a group shot with me in it, I just activate interval shooting, and then it remembers the settings I had last. That brings me to the self-timer, which of course I have turned off, because if I need the self-timer, I do interval shooting. Then we have white balance. My starting point is auto white balance. When you're shooting DNGs, it doesn't even matter because you can change it later. It's nothing that is baked into the picture, but it's a good starting point. File format, of course, DNG. I never shoot JPEGs, so I shoot DNGs. Which brings me on the third page, of course, to the JPEG settings. I don't use them at all. I don't use the Leica looks. I don't use the film styles. That's for me something I don't use because I love to shoot in RAW, in DNG, so I have full control later in Lightroom. If you want to know more about the Leica looks, I made several videos about the Leica looks. I will put them in the description. I already talked about that in the part about the video menu. Noise reduction on long exposure I have turned on. I always use that. It's sometimes a little bit annoying if you have like a 15-second shot, then it takes another 15 seconds to reduce the noise. But I got very good results with that function on my other Leica cameras. I have not tested it yet with the Leica SL3-S, but with the Q3, for example, I have great results with that function enabled. Perspective control I have turned off. I think it's a gimmick. I rather use the perspective control that's implemented in Lightroom. Of course, if you shoot DNG, you can activate it here, and then it's only an information that you can then again disable in Lightroom, but that's all too complicated for me. I have just turned it off. The sensor format, of course, 35mm. I want to use the full sensor. If I want to crop and get closer, I can crop later. And yeah, I have no advantage if I crop in camera and the file then gets smaller. Doesn't make sense for me. Stabilization, of course, is turned on. I have turned it off in my tripod settings. Basically, the tripod settings and the handheld settings, both for video and photo, are exactly the same. The only difference is that in both, I have turned on the image stabilization in the handheld settings, and I have turned off the image stabilization in the tripod setting. Because also in photos, when you do, for example, a long exposure shot, you don't want the image stabilization do some weird stuff that will basically then give you slight motion in your picture, which you don't want. You want to have, if you have the camera on a tripod, you want to have it stable and still on a tripod, no movement. Aspect ratio 3:2 is standard. You have several possibilities here. I only use 3:2, so that's the full sensor. Flash settings I never touch because I never use a flash. I don't even own a flash. Customize control, those are again the function button settings. Those are not actually settings. You just can turn on and off the functions you want to see if you press a button to change the function of the button, and everything you enabled comes here. It's the same as in the video menu. I have just everything turned on because that gives me the most control of everything. Then you can set your dials. We already talked about the dials. You can set the joystick. Already talked about that. Then we're moving on to capture assistance, which basically are 4 profiles that show you information that help you take a picture in the photo mode. I have it actually set up the same in video and in photo mode. So on the first profile, you see my most empty profile, you see the bottom row, the upper row, and you see the leveler, the level gauge. When I press once, then I get the sidebar information. When I press once more, I get the histogram. When I press once more, I get the 1/3 frame lines. And then we have storage management. You can format your storage, and then you can basically say on photos where you want to store your photos. The first one with the equal sign here is basically you're mirroring the two. If you take a picture, it saves it on the CF Express card and on the SD card. That if something is corrupt, that gives you a backup. I just shoot on the CF first and then moving on to the SD card. You also can, if you do DNGs and JPEGs at the same time, you can separate them and do the DNGs on the CF Express card and the JPEGs on the SD card. Edit file name. As I already talked in the video menu, I'll choose an L here for SL. You could change this in another letter, for example. You can, let's say, put it in an S, but I put it in an L. So my SL has an L, my Q has a Q, my M cameras have M10. You can do several characters there. So I have an M10R and I have an M10M. So I can see in the file name which camera took the picture or took the file. Then we're coming to shutter type. I have set this on hybrid, so it's usually mechanical up to a certain point and then it becomes electronic. Auto review I have turned off because if I would turn it on, every time I take a picture, the LCD would show me that picture. I don't want that. If I want to check the picture, I do it by pressing the play button. So that's turned off. Group display mode is basically an AI function that groups certain pictures that are similar and I think chooses what the camera think is the best one. That's how I understood the function. I never used it. Then we have live view settings, which I didn't change. Those are like factory settings. Then we have the Leica FOTOS app, of course. If I set it here on performance mode, in the video menu, it's also on performance mode. If I change that here to, let's say, off or echo mode, it will also be changed in the video menu. You cannot have one here and the other there. Whatever you choose here, it will be there. Whatever you choose there, it will be here. The USB settings, again, are the same as in the video menu. Again, what you set here will be there. What you set there will be here. The user profiles, same thing. The only thing that is important, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, when you are in photo mode, and you save a profile, it will always be in photo mode because it saves the exact situation you have at the time you save a profile. If you want, when you activate that profile to be in video mode, you need to first go to video mode and save the profile there. Then it's set to video mode once you choose it. Camera settings, same as in the video menu. Not going to talk about that anymore. Same here in camera information. But now let's talk about the Leica content credentials. This I would recommend to have turned on all the time. And I also recommend to put in here your name. Why? Because now your name is baked into the EXIF data. That's the first thing. So if anybody opens the picture, they can see it was taken by you. And if it's registered in the content credentials, if anybody manipulates it, it can be followed back to the original photo. It's a little bit complicated. If you're interested in what the content credentials are, there is a website. I'm going to put a link in the description as well. But even if you never ever use the content credentials, please put your name in there, because then every picture you take has at least your name baked into the file, which I think is an important thing because you are the artist and you are the person who takes the picture. And on the last page, we of course have the language. This brings me to the end of the video about the SL3-S menu. Of course, it is somewhat similar to the SL3, but of course we have the big difference that we can record to an external SSD with the SL3-S, which we cannot do until this day to the original SL3. Otherwise, of course, we have some more video functionality. And now I did 2 videos. One is about rigging the camera, one is about the menu, and I'm now off on testing the camera. So let me remind you once again, if you don't want to miss future videos about the SL3-S or other videos I'm doing on photography or photo related stuff or even video related stuff, please become a subscriber. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you want to know what my favorite Leica M lens is, check out this video. Stay curious.